Alright, before we can even start with today's video, we gotta go back to yesterday's video and clarify something very important. We had somebody who says that they are a local county official and that all my information is wrong. He claims that we have record number of tourists. Now, I want you guys to look up where the sun is. This is 15 minutes before sunset. We've already driven past 2 empty parking spaces, and if you look in front of me, you can see that the entire back half of the Siesta Key parking lot is still empty. Anyone who's ever been to this beach knows that you usually have to drive around for 10 to 15 minutes, and you're lucky if you can find a parking spot. The fact that the entire back half of this parking lot is empty and how easy it was for me to find parking available, it was abundant, should just give you an idea of how dead Siesta Key was. Siesta Key is a world-renowned beach, one of the biggest travel destinations in Florida. So looking at it here, you can clearly know how empty the beach is. There's nothing to be faked here. This is what the beaches actually look like. This has been the worst tourist season we've ever had down here. And it isn't a surprise after Idalia, Helene, Milton. Let's take a drive down the town center of Lakewood Ranch. Now this isn't bad at all for a Wednesday night. You got 2 places playing live music. You got people dancing on the street on a Wednesday. But Lakewood Ranch is not a tourist or spring breaker destination. These are people who live here year-round, or they live in New York City or Philly or Chicago and they commute back and forth. For example, Monday mornings I get a lot of people that live in Lakewood Ranch right here in Sarasota, and then they get on an airplane and spend the entire week in New York City where they work. Now, University goes from Lakewood Ranch directly to the Sarasota airport. It's a straight shot, and many people work in New York City, but they live here in Florida. As you guys know, I Uber drive in the area and I talk to my passengers, and an overwhelming number of the people that are traveling right now are people who live down here. They have a second home in Florida, but they have to work in another bigger place. Thus, these people have to commute weekly back and forth. A lot of you guys think that Lakewood Ranch is kind of like a bougie suburb, but that's because you don't realize that inside of the bigger gated communities are actually some pretty freaking affluent people who have properties in other states, and they actually commute back and forth between Florida, New York, and Florida and other destinations. But when it comes to the tourist season, we have had the absolute worst tourist season we've ever had. going back as far as 2013 or 2014, for a county official to come up in my channel and start talking about how this has been the best tourist season we've ever had, you have smoked yourself retarded. For a fact, we had 2 hurricanes make landfall out here last year. That in itself is more than enough reason for us to have a bad season. Let's not get started on all the other things that are happening in Florida right now. We're not going to get into that. Overall, we are having the worst tourist season we have ever had in Florida, at least here. And I've been to Miami this year. I've been plenty in Tampa. I got family down in Naples and Fort Myers, so we're down there all the time. I was just recently in Naples, and I hadn't seen Naples that empty since about 2014. Now, the crazy thing is that on my YouTube channel, we have a record of every single period of the year for every place we've lived videos talking about the situation. If you guys remember, the first year we moved back to Fort Myers, that year we were talking about it took us an hour and 45 minutes to drive from Lehigh to Fort Myers Beach. That isn't the case this year. In fact, Fort Myers is a freaking ghost town. And again, we're not going to elaborate on all the reasons on today's video. I think if you've been watching my channel, you kind of understand the combination of immigration issues, ecological issues, and now on top of this, hurricane destruction, which makes the red tide be worse. That just kind of summarizes the idea of why Florida has been so bad this year. At the start of COVID, when we left Naples, Florida, we drove to Alabama. We were stuck in Sarasota for 45 minutes at a complete standstill on 75. That is the way traffic used to be in Sarasota during the time of COVID. Traffic is not that bad. You around 435 get bumper to bumper, but it isn't at a standstill. There's no traffic here compared to previous years. Now, people may feel that way, but these are people who don't leave their houses and get out and be about as much as I do in the state of Florida. So if you're saying that this person here, they're saying that they're a tax collector or something. If you're a tax collector, you're probably 40 hours a week in front of a desk. I'm a YouTuber. I'm 100 hours a week on the streets. And then I Uber drive at night on top of that. So you're not on the streets more than me to know about what's happening on the streets more than me. When I tell you this is the worst tourist season we've ever had, I downright mean it. Yeah, this is the worst tourist season we've had here in a while. Why is this a surprise? You had hurricanes, you had red tide. What do you expect? So as you guys know, I Uber drive, so let me tell you a little bit about my day here on a Wednesday in Sarasota. So yesterday I did Siesta Key. That's where we did the spring break review, which I said it was empty. That made a lot of people very angry, trying to disagree with me, saying that it's full. Well, you can see the video of the parking lot, and you can see that it's empty, so that's done and over with. So since I didn't do very well with the spring breakers, they didn't tip very well, I decided to today try touristy areas. So the interesting thing is that I went for touristy areas today, and I got about the same percentage of tips. I made $100 in total, and about like 17 of that was tip. So we're talking roughly a 20% tip rate, which is about the same as I made yesterday. So interestingly, I made the same percentage of tips working spring breaker areas. So working spring breaker areas, I made about a 17% tip rate. And today working touristy areas, I made 17% as well, which means that whether working spring breakers or areas that I thought were touristy, I kind of ended up getting about the same amount of money, which is interesting because I've always been under the impression that touristy areas bring more tips. However, there is one clear distinction that I ended up getting too many workers. So what happens is many times you may try working an area thinking you're going to get tourists, but you end up getting the workers. All right, so we're driving down Central. Now this is like the homeless Central in Sarasota, and you can see that there are very few homeless people here tonight. I don't know what happened. I think the police has been targeting this particular spot, or the homeless people have had to kind of spread out as police presence is heavier. I'm not sure really what's happening there, but there's usually about 50 to 100 homeless people there. And right now there's only like 5 or 6. So I don't know why the homeless people spread out. It could be that we've had a few really cold nights and the homeless people try to get in the shelters if it gets this cold. But regardless, there aren't too many homeless people out and about in this little area, which is kind of interesting since this area is usually packed. But back to my mathematical equation, the number of people who work at restaurants that use Uber is fixed throughout the whole year. The number of tourists can fluctuate. So if you have a lot of tourists, the percentage of people who you're picking up that are workers is very small, right? But if you have very little tourists, then the percentage of people that you get that are workers is higher. So the fact that I got a high percentage of workers tonight would suggest that the overall number of tourists is very low. That's freaking basic math right there. I don't know, for example, there's 100 people that work and use Uber on St. Armand Circle. Just throwing a number out there, right? Out of those 100, there's usually 10,000 tourists. So the chances of you getting a worker are really small. But if you only had 100 tourists, then the percentage of workers would be significantly higher. So on this particular night, I got an extraordinarily high percentage of workers in touristy areas, which means that the overall number of tourists is exceptionally low right now. So from here on, we're heading forward into the islands. In the islands, you will usually get maybe 1 in 20 to be a worker. In the last few months, it's been like 1 in 7, and on this particular night, it was about half. So the number of tourists is really freaking low. Now keep in mind that the tourists don't have to show up, but the people that work do. Now normally when I work solely tourist areas, my tip rate can get as high as 40% easily. In fact, I've had nights, and I've posted on my YouTube channel, where my tip number will be higher than my fare number. That's like a 50%. And that's working solely tourist areas. We're talking downtown and the islands. So right now, clearly, there's not too many tourists in Sarasota. Places like Lakewood Ranch where I live, yeah, there's good nightlife, but that's just the locals doing what they do. Reality of the situation is that we really are still recovering from the hurricanes. Now, this person mentioned in their comment that, well, the hotel numbers are the highest they've ever been. And there's a very simple explanation for that. In fact, it's too simple. The reason that the number of hotel occupancies are higher is because everybody who was planning an event in Sarasota during the time of the hurricane had to cancel it, and in the aftermath of the hurricane. So you have backed up weddings. There's people who are planning to have a wedding here, and they weren't able to have it because of the hurricane. So now all those weddings that are backed up from like 6 to 8 months from the hurricane cleanup are all packing in the hotels right now. Also, many of the people that used to stay in Airbnbs. Those are mostly like vacation homes along the water. Most of those got flooded, but the hotels, they're 15, 20 stories high. They might have had damage on the first floor, but there's usually no residency on the first floor. It's on the second and up, which means that large hotels like Marriott's, for example, and residences and all those big chain hotels, they were able to continue having guests immediately after the hurricane because they're bigger, newer constructions up to the current building code, so they weren't affected by hurricane destruction. But most of the Airbnbs and small little motels, which dot the coastline, is where a lot of people stay, all of that is right now being rebuilt since the hurricane. So, of course, the occupancy in hotels right now is going to be extraordinarily high compared to usual because the people that were staying in hotels around the same time last year would have had more options like Airbnbs and vacation rentals that today don't exist. So, of course, the occupancy rates for hotels are going to be at their highest levels because hotels didn't suffer the same destruction as people in vacation rentals and other types of properties. And now all the people that had planned events are having to cram them into those hotels because they were planning their wedding 6 months ago. They were planning their Siesta Key wedding or their Longboat Key wedding or their Lido Key wedding or their Ritz-Carlton downtown wedding during the times of the hurricanes, and they had to push it back till now. Does that mean we have more tourists now? No, it doesn't. It means you have less supply and inventory of places for people to rent, so the demand for the remaining hospitality, like hotels, will be higher. So this person here, they think they're going to make a convincing argument about, well, the hotels are full now more than ever. Yes, they are. But is it because there's more tourists? No, it's because there's less options for people to stay at. See, this is the difference between me, somebody who is smart, and an idiot who thinks that he knows everything from behind a desk, but he's not on the ground. He doesn't know anything. So if you work behind a desk, you don't know anything. That's why you're behind a desk. I'm not behind a desk. I'm in the streets, son. And next time I catch you in my hood, dog.
You can't do that, Jose. You gotta play nice. No, you find a nice way of saying that.
Man, this white woman always advocating for peace and reminding me I got a house and a truck and all these great things to live for, like a white woman that loves me, and I can't just throw that away for threatening public officials, man. You're lucky, dog. You're lucky I married a white woman, dog. You really are, dog. Do you see how these people like to twist up real information to try to pass off their narrative? Now, this guy's a tax collector, so it doesn't benefit him for whatever reason that I'm making a report about how bad things are locally. Maybe he could get fired for that. I'm not sure. Or maybe now there's less money for them to steal. I'm really not sure how this works. But this narrative, look at how these people twist things up, okay? Why are occupancy rates for hotels higher now than ever? Pretty freaking simple. Yeah, you had people that had plans and they wanted to book the whole freaking Ritz-Carlton and they couldn't do it for 6 months. So now they're all doing it at once. So of course now there's more demand for hotels because people who were planning weddings and other large events, they had to back it up. Does that mean that you have a larger volume of tourists? No, but then again, this is just a prime example of how they manipulate information to try to make it seem like something's happened when it ain't. It's no secret we're having a really rough time right now in Florida. I just talked to a real estate agent today and they're telling me that the amount of inventory in Southwest Florida right now is increasing at a rate that the buyers simply cannot keep up with, and the price decreases are more than double outpacing the number of sales. So things are definitely not looking good for Florida right now. The person also went on to say, or another person in that same video, that I probably filmed this video at 5 in the morning. Now, let's just be clear. If I was on Siesta Key for sunset, so on that video that I posted, you could see that it was 7:54. This clip is actually included in that video. And guess what? I actually have body cam footage of me turning on the Uber app at 7:44, which means that I waited 10 minutes just to get to the point where I uploaded that clip. So to the people that are telling me that I'm a liar and that I filmed this in the morning, here's the evidence. There's people walking away from the beach after sunset. My phone confirms the time. I bet you didn't think I had body cam footage of what I did this whole day. I really don't understand why these people want to go on my video and call me a liar. They say they live on Siesta Key and that what I'm saying is wrong, when in reality, the reality is clear, dude. Like, yeah, does it hurt your business? I mean, what incentive do you have to try to paint me a liar for saying that things are bad? Does it hurt your business on the island? I mean, what exactly is your motive for calling me a liar? Because both of the people that went on that video and said that I was lying about the situation here in Florida, there's your evidence. Look, whether we're busy or we're dead, if we're busy, I got a video about how busy it is. And if we're dead, I got a video about how dead it is. I make money either way. Problem with some of these people is they seem to only make money in one direction. So now that things are going bad for them, they don't want me reporting the truth. And a lot of people that live in this metropolitan area, have businesses here, don't want me to report the truth about what's going on in this state. But the truth is the truth, and people do need to know. And at the end of the day, they travel down here and they're going to see it for themselves either way. I'm just saving people a lot of time and money by doing it for them. Well, I'm dropping off somebody here at the Ritz-Carlton, and I'm going to tell you, it was actually a really cool experience because the person I'm dropping off was a teacher in Louisville, Kentucky, and she told me how much she loved Cuban food, and it just made me happy. As you guys know, I used to live in Louisville, a city that has over 20,000 Cubans, just like me. What a plague. Now, many years ago, when you met somebody from Louisville, Kentucky, they would talk about the Louisville Cardinals or the baseball bats. Today in 2025, when I get a passenger from Louisville, they usually brag about the Cuban food scene in Louisville. And this is the second passenger that I've had like in the last week or so that has bragged about how good the Cuban food is in Louisville without me saying that I'm Cuban. Maybe they can figure it out just because, there's so many Cubans up there. They see me, they kind of identify me as Cuban. But my point being is that it's very interesting how people in Louisville are so proud of their Cuban community up there, where in a lot of places like Florida, like they kind of try to push that off to a side. That's not really something that they want to mainstream like culturally. But in Louisville, Kentucky, the people seem very proud of the Cuban community. It's kind of like how Detroit is kind of infused with Middle Eastern culture, or Houston with Mexican culture, or Miami with Cuban culture. Well, in Louisville, Kentucky, like people actually, like the first thing they tell me about their city is how they got this huge Cuban food scene going on and that they really like it. And if I go to Louisville, I should try Cuban food. And I'm like, yo, I'm Cuban, I got you. And I used to live in Louisville. But it is interesting that like the people in Louisville that I meet, that's what they talk about. That's like what they are starting to identify with as their city. As you guys know, 20,000 Cubans moved to Louisville, and a lot of them are kind of in the east side of the city and like Newburgh area, and they've infused the area with culture, food, cuisine, and the people in Kentucky love it. And it's just interesting because, a lot of other cities have smaller Cuban communities. A lot of cities try to diminish the influence of migrants on their city's culture, but that isn't the case with Louisville, Kentucky. Every American person that I get down here from Louisville like brags about the Cuban food scene in Louisville, and they tell me about how they have 20,000 Cubans and how the city's changed and how all these great things. And that's not exactly the reception that migrant communities have everywhere. Now, keep in mind that Louisville also has Vietnamese. They also have some Somalians. They have Bosnians. Bowling Green, Kentucky, for example, I think they're up to like 10% Bosnian. So this part of Kentucky did take in a lot of immigrants like back in the 90s. And today they're very thriving communities. And the city as a whole embraces their culture. And now they're like putting it out as their own, So it just kind of touches me as a Cuban that way up there in Kentucky, all these tourists, when they tell me about their city, this is what they want to tell me. It's kind of really neat that they would just embrace the Cuban community like that, because as you guys have heard my stories, that definitely isn't the case everywhere. There's communities that simply do not support businesses. They don't embrace it. Like you may have heard, like in the Ocala area, a lot of Puerto Ricans are moving to Central Florida. Americans won't go to those businesses. They won't support them. In Fort Myers, for example, there's all these Latin businesses. White people will not support those businesses. Well, here in Sarasota, when I go to a Cuban restaurant, there might not be a single Cuban customer. All the customers might be American. So there's places that embrace other people's cultures and support them. And there's places where, man, they simply diminish the cultural influences of their migrant community. So now I get a lot of passengers from Ohio as well. Ohio is right across the Ohio River from Louisville, right? It's like not too far away. I don't know, Louisville might be like an hour and a half from Cincinnati or something, right? Well, outside of Cincinnati is Springfield, Ohio. Like when I get people from Ohio, they actually try to tell me how Haitians are, the same mainstream crap that they pass around. And I'm like, dude, we have 600,000 Haitians in Florida. I think the cats would be disappearing here first because we have a lot more of them. But the reality is that there are communities like Ohio, for example, where they just go on and kind of attack their immigrant communities. And it's just interesting to see, like, when I meet people from different cities, how they describe their cities. When I meet people from Ohio, they talk about how Asians are moving up there and eating their pets. And I'm sitting here like, dude, we have 600,000 Haitians. And besides that, I'm from Cuba. Cuba is even poorer than Haiti. You guys realize that, right? Cuba's poorer than Haiti. Where I'm from is poorer than Haiti. At least you can send a vehicle to Haiti. You can't send crap to Cuba. So, I think now you can, but why would you? My point being, Cuba's poorer than Haiti for the most part. So what I'm really trying to tell you is there's nothing. A person from Ohio isn't going to tell me anything about Haitians when Cuba's 40 miles from Haiti. You get what I'm saying? Like when I lived in Cuba, a Haitian lived in my house with my family. So I'm not going to have somebody from Ohio try to educate me on a Haitian when I grew up in a house in Cuba where there lived a Haitian. When I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, my mama used to babysit Haitians. My best friend in Louisville growing up was a Haitian. His baby sister grew up in the hands of my mom. His dad was killed in Louisville, Kentucky, and me and him were best friends. When I moved to Naples, Florida, I lived next door to Haitians for 20 years, bro. So you're not going to have a Haitian somebody from Ohio trying to tell me about Haitians, because I grew up in the laps of a Haitian, bro. My grandpa, when I was little, my real grandpa lived in Holguín, and I lived in Camagüey. I never saw my real grandpa when I was a little kid. But my real grandpa was a Haitian man by the name of Lino. My grandpa, that my mom said, this is your grandpa, it wasn't my real grandpa, it was a Haitian man. And I grew up on a slap since I was little, bro. So I'm not gonna have somebody from Ohio try to tell me about Haitians. My grandpa's practically Haitian. My real grandpa, because my actual blood DNA grandpa, I've never been around. The grandpa that was around me was an old Haitian man that used to live in my house in Cuba. So how the crap, I've been around Haitian people since I was a freaking little baby. I'm going to have somebody from Ohio who met a Haitian yesterday for the first time try to tell me something about Haitians, something that I know since the time I was born, bro. But anyways, I get tourists from everywhere, and like some tourists are really disrespectful and nasty depending on where they're from. And some tourists are really fun. Like the ones from Iowa are pretty fun. You just start making some corn jokes and they love it. People from Louisville, like I said, that's the routine. People from Ohio, that's unfortunately the routine for a lot of people from Ohio. So I'm going to give you an idea of who's actually coming down here right now. Louisville is pretty big right now. The Carolinas are pretty big. For a fact, Ohio is pretty big, just as well as Michigan. Pennsylvania is huge down here in upstate New York. A little bit of New York and New Jersey. Some Connecticut's here or there. Kentucky is always huge, but I think a lot of people from Kentucky actually drive. They don't fly down here. You get a lot of people from Virginia, West Virginia. Missouri is pretty big up here as well. Illinois is huge. So these are the states we're seeing the most people from this year. I love Uber driving because it really puts me in contact with a lot of people. But a lot of people, not everybody, the overwhelming majority of people you meet are very nice and very decent. But some people are just unfreaking bearable, man. Like this wave of people that are coming here now with this whole anti-Canadian thing, and you got the ones that are anti-Haitian. Listen, I grew up in freaking Florida, dude. Like, I was born in Cuba. Like, you're gonna tell me there's 500,000 Haitians in Cuba? I don't know if you guys know that. Like, 50% of Cuba's black population is really Haitian from descendancy, and they still, talk Creole and stuff like that. Like I said, my real grandpa never showed up. My grandpa was a Haitian man in Cuba, so I've been around Haitians since I was little. There's 600,000 Haitians in Florida. Somebody from Ohio is going to teach me about Haitians? Get the crap out of here, bro. And all these passengers that ain't tipping me, bro, if you don't tip me, I'm going to drive back to your house, pick you up, and take you back where I picked you up, man. You better tip me, dog. And look, this is the busiest I've seen St. Armand Circle in a long time. Usually you can't even get a parking spot here. Not even in the middle loop you can get a parking spot. It's just that place where if you come to St. Armand Circle and you found a parking spot, you were very fortunate. At least there are some cars here and some people outside in St. Armand Circle. This is like 10% capacity. I'm not sure if this figure is correct, but this is what the locals are telling me. They're telling me that about 50% of the businesses in St. Armand Circle have not been able to open yet. So that should just give you an idea how much we still got to recover before we're back to normal. If you're thinking about spring breaking up here, I hope you're able to make it and enjoy our beaches, but this is the reality right now. All right, so I had the craziest thing happen to me at the Sarasota airport. So now there's a new terminal at the Sarasota airport that you can exit through the back behind the gas station. This is for people that are doing Uber pickup. A lot of the passengers haven't figured it out, and a lot of the drivers haven't figured it out. Now, I followed the GPS directions, and they took me to the back of the airport, so I was like, where the crap am I going? Because there is a brand new terminal that just opened up, I'm going to guess, like in the last few days. Now, here's the nightmare. The passengers haven't figured it out because it's just a small airport, and where the new terminal is at, you can't see it from the old terminal, even though they're right next to each other, because it's kind of behind it. So what a freaking nightmare this has become. So I picked up a girl. Now, this girl gets into my Uber, and I say, "Are you Christian?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm Christian." Okay, cool, get in the car. Now, I wasn't asking her about her religious faith. I don't know if she was a Southern Baptist or something, but she's like, I'm a very Christian woman. I'm like, okay, Christian, get in here. She wasn't Christian. She was somebody else. Now, the real Christian is wondering why the crap I just accepted her into my vehicle when she's at the terminal waiting for me. Now, she's not at the new terminal where I'm at. She's at the old terminal. What a nightmare, right? So we're not even at the same terminals, and I'm picking her up. She's freaking out. Now, as this is happening, Uber figures out that there's something wrong as well. So my wife starts to call me trying to tell me, like, and so my wife's blowing up the phone because she thinks I got carjacked or something, because Uber sent her a notification saying there's something wrong with me. So Katie's blowing up my phone, my Uber passenger's blowing up the phone, and I got this woman in my car who's trying to figure out why the crap we're heading north when we're supposed to be heading south, and she's already figured out she might not be in the same Uber, so she's asking me to look up the address. All the while, there's a guy in another red pickup truck behind me, scratching his head, wondering why his passenger got into my vehicle. So this is the absolute most traffic terminal airport nightmare that has ever happened to me at once. I have like 5 people trying to figure out what the crap just happened in this wild scenario, but I figured it out because I realized that the person, I'm like, are you Christian? She's like, yeah, I'm Christian. I've already told you I'm a religious person. I'm like, no, ma'am, no. No, what's your name? She's like, oh, I'm something else. And I was like, no, Lauren, you're in the wrong Uber, Lauren. Okay, so you need to find the right Uber. So look in my rearview mirror, and guess what's in the rearview mirror? A shiny red pickup truck. There's apparently another idiot in Sarasota who is also Uber driving out of a monstrous pickup truck. His is a Dodge Ram. And he's like a big redneck. I've seen him before. He's got, he's about the size of me. Real cool guy, man. I grabbed her stuff out of my car, and I, unloaded it and handed it to him. Just another big, funky looking red. He kind of looks like me. It's a big, giant redneck guy with a shiny red truck. We were just laughing so hard. That guy seems like a pretty cool option. If you're Uber driving in Sarasota, you could end up getting me in a big, giant truck, or you can get this redneck with another giant red truck. Both of us are pretty cool options. So if you get this redneck or you get the other one, you get the Cuban or the redneck, whatever, these are both good options for Uber drivers. What is hilarious is that this girl figured that there's no way on earth that there's another red truck this monstrous Uber driving in Sarasota. But it turns out that there is another red shiny truck in Sarasota that is also Uber driving late at night, and that was part of the confusion. She just looked at her phone and said, hey, here's a red truck, let me get right in. And I asked her, are you Christian? I asked everybody for their name. This girl somehow said yes. She thought I was asking her about her religious affiliation, not her name. That's horrible. I mean, but it's like imagine you get off an airplane and you're in Florida, you come from New York City, right? You get off on an airport in Florida, are you Christian? Because if you're not a Christian, you're not getting in my car. Yo, this is a complete nightmare. I have like 5 phone calls going off at once. Katie thinks I'm getting kidnapped or something. What a freaking airport nightmare this was. So eventually, I helped the girl get into the right Uber. The guy was cracking up. He's got a big truck that's red. I got a big truck that's red. Understandable confusion. There's a new terminal, even more confusion. But then the crazy thing is now I got to go back. Look at this idiot. I got to go back now to the other terminal, and I'm on the phone with my Uber passenger. I'm like, hey, please don't cancel. I'm not crazy. Just bear with me. We had a little misunderstanding here. And she was nice enough to actually wait for me as I drove around the entire terminal to go to the other end to pick her up. And that is just the most confusing nightmare I've ever been in at an airport. But I always ask people, are you Larry? Are you Paul? Are you Cantrell? Are you Shaniqua? Are you Jose? Are you Juan? Are you Maria? Are you Cantrell Shaniqua? Okay, like who you is, man. What it is, what time it is. Are you Larry the Cable Guy? Who the crap are you? Are you inbred? Are you whatever the crap the name is in that mug? Are you this person? I need to know who the crap you are. Must know. This lady agreed to it. She was like, yeah, I'm Christian. She's probably like, wow, these Uber drivers in Florida are backwards. I tell you what. No, but, what a nightmare. And to think I could have started driving her in the wrong direction, that would have been an even scarier situation.